The changes on the roads ahead of me. Steadily rocking with the words so incredibly. I've been called for a greater purpose. To do the verses, to speak life to my family, scrapping curses. Trying to free those enslaved in the negative mind state. Trying to feed the hungry, everything on my plate. Hopefully it's enough. Hope the sun shines every day that we wake up to show gratitude and change our attitudes. God is giving us no matter the longitude or latitude. Even on the cloudiest days, His love is shining through, shining like the light comments on me back in elementary school. So you can want to tell your sister.
Hi everyone, so thank you so much. Good evening everyone. It's so good to see so many of you coming on here tonight. I know it's the weekend, it's Friday, it's also the end of the year, and so everyone's getting tired and everything like that. And also I know you guys are working on your projects right now. But we're hoping that this session is going to be a fantastic session tonight. We've got the amazing team from Zappi who we've been working with all throughout the year. I'm going to be facilitating some sessions today. We're streaming directly live on YouTube as well, so just be mindful of that. But I'll just use this opportunity to introduce today's Empowerment Day and also to introduce our amazing guest. Okay, so my name is Oyin Kosola Debayo. Most people call me Oyin, and I am one of the directors here at the Black Coder Coding Program Bootcamp. And the Coding Bootcamp is essentially a 6-month boot camp specifically for Black women who are unemployed or with a wage of 21K or under to become software developers. And at the end, we work with them to get them a role in a software developer role with our partner organization. So the Coding Bootcamp, as I said, is a new bootcamp for Black women and by Black women. And essentially it's a bootcamp that empowers you to get the skills to become a full stack software developer. It's run 2 evenings a week, Monday and Wednesday, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. and Tuesdays and Thursdays, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. as well. We also have the Empowerment Days, which is obviously for our attendees and external members. And essentially this is one of those Empowerment Days. Now, the bootcamp is sponsored by the West Midlands Combined Authority. And they're equally passionate about making sure that you guys gain digital skills and great jobs alongside it too. So those are our main sponsors. This is a collaboration between Coding Black Females and Neo Enterprise. So I am the CEO and co-founder of Neo Enterprise, and we've got Coding Black Females, and that's run by Charlene Hunter. So these are so myself and Lauli, who are the co-founders of Neo Enterprise, and Charlene Hunter is the founder of Coding Black Females. So it's a partnership between those two organizations. So what's an Empowerment Day? So when we were putting together this course content, we wanted something that we wanted Black women to get the skills, but we also wanted you guys to be empowered, motivated, and supported through these evenings. It's a time to let your hair down, to just open up your mind and learn. So excited for today because we've had empowerment days from cybersecurity, life as front-end developer, and so on and so forth. So if you want to actually find out more about our empowerment days, if you go on blackcoder.eventbrite.com, we've got an empowerment day next week, next Friday. It's a bonus one because it's a well-needed one, because it's been a tough time learning how to code. So we wanted to do one on well-being. So it's going to be really, really relaxing next week. So if you want to join, be sure to sign up. So without further ado, I just want to introduce Zappi, the Zappi team, the amazing Zappi team. And they're going to be talking about the importance of soft skills and feedback for working in an engineering or in a software developer team. And most of the people in the Black Coder Bootcamp would have engaged with Zappi in the past, and would also want to work in a software developer team. So actually this session is really, really keen and important for you as you kind of start to transition into your career, because post-March, you will become software developers for those in the Black Coder Bootcamp. Exciting stuff. So yeah, I'm excited. So I'm just going to hand over to the Zappi team. Tom, do you want to introduce the Zappi team?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Owen. Do you want to stop sharing your screen and I can pull up our stuff? So really excited for today. I'm really excited to get involved. We'll do some quick intros. We'll run around the Zappi team first.
For those in the Black Coder Bootcamp. Oh, sorry, guys.
So yeah, I'm excited. So I'm just going to hand over to the Zappi team. Tom, introduce the Zappi team.
That was
for sure. Thanks, Wayne. Do you want to stop sharing your screen and I can pull up our stuff? So really excited for today. I'm really excited to get involved. We'll do some quick intros. We'll run around the Zappi team first.
Awesome. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Don't worry. God, you know when you hear the sound of your own voice, you know, I don't want to hear it. So we'll do some quick introductions. I thought about maybe introducing Zappi as well, but I'm a rubbish salesperson. So I thought actually what we do is introduce a bit about ourselves and what we do, and also what we're passionate about, and that will hopefully give you a bit of a feel for, you know, what it's like to work at Zappi and that kind of stuff. So the other thing actually throughout this, Lydia's going to monitor the chat, but feel free to like pile in with questions. If you want to interrupt us to ask something or have a conversation, we're really up for it. Otherwise, stick questions in the chat and Lydia will shout out as well. So like briefly introduce myself first of all. So my name's Tom. I used to work in product, so I was a product manager for a few years, and then I worked as like an agile coach, scrum master, sort of always quite focused on culture and organizational design and that sort of stuff. And then about 18 months ago, I took on the head of people role, which is really about how do we make Zappi a fantastic place to work for everyone, and how do we optimize all of the employee experience and that sort of stuff. But I always try to apply a sort of product development approach to that work. And the thing that I'm really passionate about, other than my daughter, who's sadly a bit sick, she's downstairs, she's probably going to come say goodnight at some point, is my real passion is like creating a really meaningful place to work, right? I love the idea of an organization that has a positive impact on the environment, on our societies, and on the people who work there. And I think about that kind of halo effect of if everyone's having a really meaningful time in their work, what does that do for them in their social circles and the people around them? And you know, what all of that positive energy going out into the world, without wanting to sound too much like a hippie. That's what I feel really passionate about. So I'm going to pass it over to Saray. Do you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Sure. So hi, everyone. Thanks for having me and the rest of the Zappi team. So my name is Saray. I started off as a software developer about 9 years ago, but then gradually progressed into project management and Agile Scrum Master. And at the minute at Zappi, I am an Agile team lead. What my passion is, I'm very much passionate about improving ways of working and building, high-performing teams. There's someone I'm quite passionate, and anything DIY related, just call me. Gwen, would you like to go next?
Thank you, Saray. Happy Friday, everyone. Lovely to meet you all. My name is Gwen, and just like Saray, I was a software engineer. I started my career off in Now TV. If any of you tried to watch Game of Thrones on Now TV about 5 years ago and you couldn't, that was probably my fault, but don't worry, I did fix it. And just like Saray, I'm an Agile team lead now at Zappi, working across a couple of teams. I am passionate about work-related things, but I'm also passionate about going on holiday and making scrapbooks on my travels. This is one that I'm currently working on. This is my Cuba scrapbook. So yeah, that's it. I'll pass on now to Lydia.
Hi, everyone. Thank you guys for coming and thank you for having us. My name is Lydia. I work as a product specialist in the product operations team. For those who don't know what that is, it's just really like, I like to call it the glue that holds Zappi together. But yeah, so I originally graduated with a software engineering degree, but kind of after graduating went into a more people role. And over the years and working with Zappi and just seeing how amazing the development team is and the company as a whole, I decided to start my journey sort of relearning my skills into development. I'm about 3 months in now, so and it's exciting. So I kind of know what you guys are going through in a way. What I'm passionate about, it might sound a little bit selfish, but self-development. I'm passionate about constantly being a better version of myself every day, and being a mum that forces me to do that. Like my son, who you might hear shouting every now and then, apologies, definitely encourages me to be better, to develop better, and I've become passionate about that. So I'll pass over to Josh.
Thank you. Yeah, so my name is Josh. I'm one of the software engineers that works at Zappi. Some of you might have heard me in the day a couple of weeks ago, speaking about Ruby on Rails. My passion, I think I could talk about something like a technical, like a work thing at the moment, which is GraphQL. It's an amazing technology, which I'm super into. And it's one of those things that I get told off for talking too much about, and I have to kind of keep quiet until someone else brings it up and then I can jump in. But if you're interested in learning a bit about it or want to just chat about it, then grab me on Slack and I'll send you endless messages and articles and videos and all kinds of fun things to read about, because it's I think it's great. Back to you, Tom.
Yeah, he's not lying. If you want to talk about GraphQL, to hit Josh up. And if you want to talk about Agile, Scrum Masters, Agile team leads, or whatever, talk to Saray and Gwen, because they'll talk your ear off for hours. So we put together a little deck with a few slides, but not too many. And we looked at, before when we sat down with Voy and we said, right, well, what should we do for an empowerment day? We looked at the course content, what you're all doing, and we thought, how could we contribute something that's sort of meaningful and important to us, and share some of that knowledge, and also just like learn from you as well a bit, and kind of your experiences. And so we came on this thing of like, well, why don't we think about the important aspects of working in a team? So today we're going to start quite broad and talk a bit about a growth culture and what that means practically and for how we work. And then we're going to talk quite broadly about giving and receiving feedback, because we think that's a really, really important part of working in a team, but also self-development and progress and all that kind of stuff. And then Josh is kind of really going to focus in on PR reviews and some of the detail around that and some of the practices that can really help develop your coding skills. So that's what we're going to focus on today. We've introduced ourselves. We would love for you in the chat to also do the same. So just say hello and give us one thing that you're passionate about as well. And we'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. While you're doing it, I will answer Melanie's question, which is, what does Zappi do as a company? So we've built a platform that automates market research projects. So it's like when companies, big brands, most brands that you have heard of, when they're developing new products or ad campaigns, they come on our website, they upload information about it, and then we capture a load of data, we process it, we analyze it, we derive insights from it, all programmatically, right? So yeah, it's about the programmatic collection of data and then analyzing it and then giving people meaning from that data, basically visualizing it in different ways. Ian, passionate about female empowerment? Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed. What else? Yeah, passionate about data. Amazing.
If you want to unmute your mics as well, if that's easier, please feel free.
Yeah. If you want to just shout out stuff as well, that's great. Passionate about sustainability. Yeah, Abigail, I totally feel you. Yeah, we just launched a load of our kind of environmental goals for next year. I feel exactly the same. Passionate about developing confidence in creative people. Amazing, Emma.
Someone's passionate about Agile up there. Hello, friend.
Yeah, hit Gwen and Saray up. Honestly, you'll have a great time. Tanani, passionate about AI and RPA education. Jayan, passionate about graphic design. Amazing. Samira, about equality. Yeah, me too. Mumtaz, passionate about tech. Amazing. Passionate about learning. Absolutely. Yeah, I love it. There's definitely, now I'm in a people role, there's definitely a part of me that misses product and like creating cool user interfaces. I still do it. I still build stuff for people. I do it surreptitiously, build little feedback apps and stuff. Amazing. Keep dropping stuff in there. I'm gonna carry on and carry on talking, but it's really awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely share all of our LinkedIn stuff afterwards. We haven't actually put it in here, but we will. Okay, I'm gonna push forward. Right. So wanted to start, we said we're going to start quite broad and just talk a bit about a growth culture and what that means to us and why it's important to us. Okay. And a lot of this thinking comes from an academic called Carol Dweck, who is an educationalist. And she writes about she kind of describes as two main types of people in the world, right? So people who believe that their talents are fixed and they're innate and they're something that they just have, and those people who believe that their talents can be developed through learning strategies, through experimentation, through trying stuff, failing, all of those sorts of things, right? And she says that if you have that kind of attitude, that you can develop your talents, you have this growth mindset, and you're going to have more success in the long run, right? That's very, very broadly, very simplistically what she says. Everyone here has obviously got a really strong growth mindset just through the fact of being here and what you're doing, all of those sorts of things. I don't like putting people in boxes. I don't think we should lock people down to labels, but I do think that you can create a culture that really encourages that kind of growth mindset of continuous development and learning and experimentation and feedback and all that sort of stuff. And that's what we try to do at Zappi. So I'm going to talk very briefly about actually practically what that means. So the first thing that it means for the culture is that we encourage learning and we encourage risk taking, right? So we really want people to take time out of their day-to-day to learn, but also to build it into their day-to-day work. And we also want to make it okay to fail, right? It should be okay to try something, get out of your comfort zone, fail and learn from it, rather than it being a problem that you failed at something. So talk about celebrating failure. I think I celebrate learning from failure rather than the failure itself, but it's a really important learning process. The next thing is to challenge our assumptions. And for that, you actually need to get clear on what your assumptions are, because so often in our lives and in our work, we just go about work and we don't really take the time to think, hang on a minute, what am I assuming about this situation? What don't I know? And how might I challenge that thing that I think is true, but I'm not actually sure? So it's about starting to get into that habit. It's about praising strategies for learning and progress. So really making a point of rewarding people and saying, you know, it's fantastic when you are learning, when you are stepping up. And lastly, and this is the one that we're kind of focused on a lot today, is it's about creating an environment where there's supportive and continuous challenge, like where you know that everyone's got your back. And so when they give you some difficult feedback, they're giving it from a really good place. And so you can get that kind of like continuous, okay, well, that's something I can learn from rather than something that I should feel uncomfortable about. So this is just a little bit about the culture that we want to create. And now I'm going to hand over to Gwen, who is going to talk you through a framework which we nicked. All of our best ideas we've nicked, by the way, from other inspirational people. So she's going to talk you through a really great framework for thinking about feedback.
Thank you, Tom. I hope you can still hear me. I've popped my my headphones in. My boyfriend's coming home with the shopping at any moment, and he's got as quiet as an atom bomb. Perfect. So yes, on to feedback. Feedback is a really important tool to harness for personal development. And there are a few animations on this slide. We did have a run through earlier, and hopefully Tom, my glamorous assistant, does know when to click. So I'm sure it won't be a surprise to anyone here to hear that there are loads of different types of feedback. Today, we're going to chat about a specific framework. It's called Radical Candor. And like Tom said, Radical Candor is a framework devised by a lady called Kim Scott. We didn't come up with it ourselves, but it keeps things simple by roughly characterizing types of feedback into 4 quadrants. And those 4 quadrants are split by 2 axes: challenge directly going left to right, and care personally going bottom to top. Now, to help me explain these 4 different types, I'm going to use an example that we can all hopefully relate to. It's a bit random, it's a bit left field, but just bear with me and just come along with me on this. I want you to imagine that we all work in an office together. It might be a bit hard to imagine that right now, because it's certainly been a very long time since I've been anywhere near an office, but just try to picture it. Now, let's say I get up and I go to the toilet. On my way back to my desk, you notice that my fly is undone. I'm flying low, my zipper is down. There's loads of different ways to explain this, but it all means one thing. So take a moment and just think what you would do in that situation. What would you do if you saw me or a colleague or your boss or your friend coming back from the toilet with their fly undone? Pop your answers in the Zoom chat. And all I ask is that you be honest. I'm not going to judge you, but what would you do if you saw this happen? Let's have a look what's going on in the chat. Stop. Oh, someone's going to tell me the truth. Someone's going to tell me as discreetly as possible. Pull me to one side and simply inform me that my fly is undone. Tom, maybe nothing. That's classic Tom, that is. Pull them aside and tell them. Message them discreetly, ignore and hope they catch it ASAP. Quietly point it out. Pull me over and inform me kindly. Probably just say that I'm flying low, depending how close we are. I would let you know. Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for participating in that. I wasn't sure if it was a bit out there, but thank you for coming along with me. So let me talk you through some possible ways of addressing this situation and what type of feedback it is. So the first form of feedback is to see me coming back from the toilet, notice my fly is down, decide to stand up in front of the whole office and shout, "Oh, Gwen, your fly's down, mate, sort it out." So this is what we would call obnoxious aggression. Yes, you've addressed the problem and you've challenged me directly, but it was kind of a really embarrassing experience for me. So you obviously didn't care personally. The second way of addressing the situation is to tell everyone, but not me. Maybe you email your whole team, or maybe you send a WhatsApp to your colleague sitting next to you and you all have a little giggle about me behind my back. So this is manipulative insincerity. You don't care personally about me and you didn't challenge directly. By the time I noticed a few hours later, ages have passed and I am just super embarrassed about what's happened. The third way of addressing the situation is to not address it at all. You don't know me very well, and although you think I'm maybe a nice person, it's just a bit embarrassing, right? And I mean, you start worrying about it. You start worrying about it because like, well, what am I going to do about it? And then you keep seeing me throughout the day and my fly's just undone. And eventually I notice, but I've had hours of embarrassment. This is ruinous empathy. You really do care personally, but you failed to challenge directly. The fourth and final way to address a situation is to pull me to one side, or maybe just say, "Hey, Gwen, I've noticed as you were coming back from the toilet that your fly's undone." That happened to me once and no one told me all day and it was so embarrassing. So here, you clearly care personally and you've challenged me directly. Whilst it was a little bit embarrassing for you, it saved me a lot of embarrassment in the long run. And that's what we call a radical candor. And a radical candor is the best, fairest type of feedback for all involved because it's kind, clear, specific, and sincere. If you wanted to find out more about radical candor, there's a really great book that you can read, or a really great, I think it's about a 20-minute video, which Kim Scott herself describes the framework. Just give it a Google. And now back to Tom, who's going to tell us a bit more about how to deliver feedback.
Thanks, Gwen. I love this framework because you can just apply it to every single feedback issue or challenge that comes up. There's a really interesting thing though, I think, just continuing from this, that I want to add to it, which is there's this thing called the idiosyncratic rater effect, which has been proven in studies numerous times over. And what it really says is that when we rate other people, when we give other people feedback, it said the feedback that we give is actually more about us and our internal biases than it is about anything objective to the other person often. That's particularly true when we rate people on scales about things. Because we're a product of all of our own histories and experiences, and we wear these spectacles that color everything that we see. Actually, it's just about the feedback that we give is just as much about us as it is about the other person, which I think is a really interesting thing. And then leads you to this question of well, okay, if that's true, how do you give good feedback, right? And so I'm going to talk a little bit about feedback that inspires growth, give you a little framework as well for giving feedback, and then talk about receiving feedback before we move on. So I think there's lots of different answers to this question, by the way. What is feedback that inspires growth? And here's just some of our reflections. So first of all, it's offered as an assessment, not a truth. So it's not an objective reality. It's just my observations on the situation, right? And it's given like that. And really importantly, it's given with positive intent and it's non-judgmental. So you know what I said earlier on, that thing of the growth culture of we've all got each other's backs. So actually, if I'm challenging you, it's coming from a really good place, and it's for your development, and it's not about politics or scoring points or anything like that. And I think when you're giving it from that place, the other person can tell, right? It's focused on fact and behaviour, not the person. if you're anything like me, you'll recognize this. I've been told sometimes, you're very messy. You're so messy, you know, and that's about me, right? That's something innate to me and my character. And actually, if that came across in a different way, like, I've noticed that you've left some dishes in the sink again, would you mind cleaning them up because you've got people coming around? You know, it's no longer about anything that's inherent to me, it's about my behavior. Thing is, if I do it too much, that's when it gets really annoying, and that's when I get shouted at, which is understandable, to be honest. So delivered personally and in the moment. So I've always think it's better to give feedback face to face or on the phone instead of in emails, particularly if it's difficult feedback, and also like quite close to when the issue or whatever it is has happened. And this one's really important, actually, consensual, because sometimes you might just be having a bit of a crappy day and you might not want some feedback from somebody that's quite existential to you and your life and your work or whatever. You know, you might just want to get your head down and do some work. So actually asking, I've got some feedback about this thing that happened, do you mind if I give it to you, can be a really nice way to open the door without putting pressure on someone. And lastly, there's this idea of giving a lot more positive than constructive feedback. One of my favorite people in the world who's big in the coaching world is a lady called Nancy Klein. She writes loads about listening, and she says give 5 positive to 1 negative feedback. That's a thing. Are there any questions in the chat? I can just see it. I can just see the chat going off. No, we're good. We're good. Okay. Cool. So that's like feedback that inspires growth. Probably the best bit of advice that anyone ever gave me around having difficult conversations and giving feedback to people was to check your relationship health first. And it's this idea that if you're going to give someone some challenging feedback, think about how strong your relationship is with that person at that moment. You can even rate it out of 10. So if you say how good is your relationship at the moment, if it's not a 9 or a 10 and you're about to deliver some difficult feedback, chances are it's going to be harder to land it. So I always do this every single time. I'm like, okay, I need to give this person some difficult feedback. Do I maybe need to repair the relationship a little bit first because we've had some friction or something like that before I actually give it? So check your relationship health is a really good bit of advice that I once got. And leading on from that, I think it's really important to like get clear in ourselves as well, because quite often when we're giving feedback, we're in quite an emotional place, and being able to take the time, you know, I'm a big, like I said before, I'm a bit of a hippie, so I'm a big fan of like breathing exercises and stuff and all of those things, but just get clear, because if you're delivering it from a really emotional place, which sometimes is still important to convey some emotion, but it can sometimes make it harder, and you can kind of increase the levels of friction when you don't need to. So take the time to like process and get clear before you give it. Okay, I'm going to give you a really simple framework, because Gwen mentioned earlier on, you know, when you're in that kind of radical candid space, you're being very specific about the feedback that you give. And we use this really simple model for giving people feedback, and I'll show you how it works. So the first thing is you talk about the specific behavior. So it's not about the person, it's about their behavior. So I'll give you an example. If I'm sitting in a meeting and I notice that somebody, we're trying to come up with a load of ideas, and somebody's talked over a number of people during that meeting. So I might go to them afterwards and I'll say, hey, look, I noticed in that meeting you talked over 3 people. Right? That's just the behavior that I've observed. Then you talk about the impact of that behavior. The impact of that behavior was I just saw that they all got really frustrated and they all just stopped talking. They all just stopped engaging. Yeah. And then the consequence of that is we were there to come up with good ideas, and 3 of the people in the room just left all of their ideas off the table. So I don't think we've got all of the good ideas that we could have gotten if we had a better conversation. And you can see how, you know, that's maybe quite an emotive thing. If somebody said that to me, you've been talking over people, maybe I hadn't realized, but that's quite an objective way of moving through the kind of the behavior, the impact that you've seen, and the consequence. So the last thing I'm going to talk about, because I think this is important as well and often gets missed, is receiving feedback greatly. So it's one thing to give feedback, but the other thing is, you know, what's your role in this, in creating this culture and learning from that feedback as well. And the first thing I'd say is drop your defenses, particularly when you're not expecting it. Sometimes getting feedback, challenging feedback, can be can be difficult, and you need to drop your defenses first, and listen. Really listen and ask questions to clarify. Really try and understand before reacting to it. And I find this works really well for me, is to like summarize it back to the person. Like, okay, let me just process this. What you're saying is X and Y. Is that right? Just to kind of keep, to try and embed it in your thinking, and also to see if you've got it right. And lastly, I always encourage people to do this at Zappi, but also show appreciation, because sometimes it's quite nerve-wracking to like go to somebody and say, I'm really not happy about the way that this went, or I feel a bit uncomfortable about what happened between us the other day. And when somebody says that to you, if you just throw it back in their face, they're probably not going to give feedback to anyone else in future. And that's not the kind of culture that we want to create. So showing appreciation is a great way to, like, first of all, make that feel like a positive conversation, but also to build on the culture of a growth mindset as well.
Melanie has a question in the chat.
Shoot, Melanie. Tell me, Lydia, what is it?
What are the kinds of things you would do to fix a relationship ahead of a difficult conversation and long before you have that difficult chat?
Oh, that's a really good question. Melanie, what can I put that question back to you? What would you do? Going to put you on the spot.
Oh dear. Perhaps take the person away from the office, and I don't know. Yeah, take them away from the office and have a few regular meetings with them ahead of perhaps the difficult chat towards the end of the week.
Yeah, I think that could be really good. Like, just have a different kind of conversation with them. I guess it really depends on the context, doesn't it? It depends on, like, is this a really serious issue you've got in your relationship, and actually, do you know what? It's going to take a long time to repair it, so you're probably best off just giving the feedback. Or is it maybe just a clear the air chat or something like that? All of those sorts of things.
We have another question. How is working remotely going? I'm finding learning remotely challenging, as I think I respond better in person.
Yeah. I don't know. Does someone else from Zappi want to answer that? What do you think, Gwen?
Yeah, I was just working remotely. I'm finding that fine. I think I've adjusted to it. We were quite good in Zappi. We have colleagues all over the world, so we're quite used to working remotely. But I agree with you that learning remotely is difficult. Saray and I recently went to a 2-day conference that was held over Zoom. And after the first sort of hour or so, I found it so difficult to pay attention on Zoom. There's so many distractions. We've got Slack going off and work still going off. So I sympathize completely that learning remotely is challenging, but working, that's going a lot better.
I think everyone's had their own challenges as well, haven't they, this year? And it's kind of gone up and down. Yeah. I know. Yeah, Melanie, I know what you're saying. And we've definitely, I think for a lot of people, it's, there are positives. Like I've really enjoyed being able to spend more time with my family, but at the same time, I really missed getting out of the house and going to the office and all those sorts of things. From a kind of feedback and growth perspective, we've tried to just like innovate a little bit. So we created a little Slack app that allows people to give feedback to each other, and we created another one called Catch Up, which kind of like it matches people up every week for 30-minute coffees. So it'd be someone who, to try and recreate that thing that if you're just working in your team all the time, you might not see people that you would have seen at the office. So it's about trying to recreate some of those kind of more social experiences, but it's definitely been a challenge for sure.
One more question, I think.
Great.
Constructive criticism. How do you prep for giving constructive criticism or receiving one?
Oh, that's a really good question. I often what I do is I'll sit. This framework I find really useful because it's just so objective and it makes you break it down. So often what I do is I actually just sit down and write down what I think I want to say to the person. Because I think also, particularly if you're coming from I don't know, if you've been triggered by something, then it's a bit easy to just jump on the phone and not maybe be as clear as you want to be. So going through this process not only makes you calm down a little bit and just think, oh, actually, you know, I can think about it subjectively, but also gives you a bit of a structure to take to somebody. Yeah.
Could I also add, Tom, to that? You know, I think this is a very great framework, right? I think one danger of providing a feedback which is not specific, right, is if we provide generic feedback, we are not specific to the situation, it causes more confusion to the other side, and it's not helping the situation, and it's not providing any constructive feedback or actions to be taken at the back of this conversation, right? So I think the more specific we are, the better we could take some actions of the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So get clear, use a framework like this to go really specific on it, prepare what you want to say, and then have the conversation. Yeah, and I think also like make time for the other person to listen to their experience as well.
And how can you work? Idman has asked, how can you work on being less defensive when you receive feedback?
Oh, that's such a good question. I don't know. Does someone else want to answer that?
I think, yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I think if it was me, I would have just tried thinking that, okay, the person that is giving me the feedback is caring for me, right? So I would try to create a positive image for myself, saying, okay, the feedback is for my own growth and, you know, improvement of myself, right? So that way I would have tried, you know, to drop the difference, really.
And I think it's important to ask yourself, can I do something with that feedback? And also have a conversation about that that feedback. Don't just accept it as it is, because if you feel a certain way, express it to give room for that person to explain their intentions, and then you can walk away with that feedback positively, I think.
But I think it's also okay to be a bit defensive. I mean, it's okay. It's quite natural. You can be a bit defensive. Just don't let it cloud what's going on. So, you know, maybe just listen and then take it away, reflect over it a bit, and then just, you know, think about it again. And then maybe the next day, the day after, you think a bit differently about it. But just accept. Don't beat yourself up if you're getting defensive all the time. It's a natural natural reaction, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And you remember what we talked about earlier on, when actually a lot of the feedback that you get is more about that person and their experiences and their biases and perspectives than it is necessarily about anything objective about you. And my way of doing it is, if anyone ever gives me some feedback which triggers me, which makes me feel defensive, or like I'm like, oh God, I just notice that I feel like that. And then that tells me that it's probably something quite important, you know, and I might feel very defensive in that moment, but I try not to actually push back on it in that moment. I just say, right, I'm going to take it away, think about it, think about why I'm feeling like this, because sometimes it's not always obvious. And then like Gwen said, have a conversation later on, digest it a little bit and say, actually, is this relevant to me? What does this mean for me? Those sorts of things.
Can I just chip in? I know this is a Zappi session. Can I just?
Yeah, please, Owen, please.
So one of the things as well for me, and personally, my video is not even on. Yeah, there we go. One of the things that personally for me that I found in terms of feedback is what's like my mindset about feedback. When I think about feedback as a point of growth rather than a point of actually attacking me as a person,
Yeah.
I take feedback from anybody, regardless of the person's heart and intentions. So yeah, so just have a think about, you know, your perspective on feedback. And sometimes as Black women, how we've been brought up, I don't know, I can speak from experience, can be like, you know, you didn't do that, you know, and it can be very much like, you know, about you as a person rather than the behavior. So have a think about like your background and how you can undo and unlearn some of those things that may have come with your background as well.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Owen. Okay, let's crack on. Thank you for all the wonderful questions. We're gonna now hone in a little bit and talk more specifically about code reviews, pull requests, and applying some of these ideas to the day-to-day of programming work. So I'm going to hand over to Josh to take us through a few ideas.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, so we've spoken a bit about, you know, feedback in general, and, you know, these are kind of really important skills for all different kinds of jobs, all areas of your work. But there is this kind of one area where being ready to receive and to be giving good feedback at where it's really important, and that's some pull requests, or sometimes these are called merge requests if you use GitLab. I'm not sure if people are familiar with like the process of pull requests. I don't know if you drop in the chat, if people open pull requests, maybe looked at pull requests before, engaged on a pull request. Cool, some yes, nice. People are familiar with this process, great. So just going to give a little very quick introduction and just kind of a recap on the pull request process, and then talk a little bit about like creating great pull requests, and then also like reviewing other people's pull requests and why that's important. And most companies will follow some kind of pull request workflow. They vary as to what's required and what's not, but their kind of core principles remain the same. And if a pull request is done correctly, it can be a brilliant opportunity to check your work is correct, catch any errors and mistakes, improve your work, and kind of share any knowledge. It's a great opportunity to do some kind of knowledge sharing with others. But if they're not done quite right, it can be a really frustrating experience. It can get quite emotive and can just be really challenging all round. So it's really important if we're opening a pull request, or if we're kind of reviewing a pull request, we just engage in it in the right way. And just to kind of make sure we're all in the same place and understanding and what we mean by when we're doing a pull request, just to give a quick example, if you're working on a Git repo and you wanted to do some work, in this example, someone might be making some README edits. They're going to create a branch from the master or main branch, add some commits, do the work, add that to that branch, and then open the pull request. And this is like the point when you're kind of requesting your code changes from your branch to be merged into master. You're kind of showing everyone, your peers, maybe the code owners, you're showing them all the work that you've done, and you're kind of asking for them to be kind of happy for you to put those into master and ask for any feedback on that work that you've done. And then once that's approved, you're then able to shift that into master and your work is done. Maybe you need to deploy to production or something, but then it's going to be there. Next one, please, Tom. So why do people do pull requests? Well, most companies won't allow you to push code directly to master. It's very, very unusual to allow people to do that. And code always must go through this kind of pull request workflow of some sort. And for me, the most useful part of that pull request process is that peer review step. And it just allows you to learn things from others, and also just kind of check the code you've written makes sense, check that it conforms to convention, the styles of the repository, make sure you haven't missed anything in your implementation. And it also provides a really great place to have conversations about the features, allows other people to contribute and share ideas, talk about different approaches. It also gives great visibility, so it allows other people to kind of see all the changes going into a repository. You can kind of track features as they head to production. You can watch them and see them go in. And it also provides quite a useful audit trail. If a bug is introduced, you can kind of see where it came from. And also if you're kind of working in a new repository, or even one that you're very used to, and you see a bit of code that looks strange, you can very quickly jump back to the pull request, where it was added to the repository, and then you can see that line of code in the context of that feature which it was added to. So it provides this way to kind of jump back and see the thinking of that person when they added that code into the repository. So it's kind of a useful tool to help check for issues, but also to kind of build that culture of continuous learning and some of the things that Tom was talking about earlier on. So if you're going to open a pull request, there's a few things to kind of think about. One of the important things is to try and keep them to kind of one task at a time. So we try and kind of, Zappi try and keep them to kind of be one contained piece of work. Maybe that's a feature or a user story, or just a small change that you just want to make, but trying to keep that one package of work as that one pull request. And then as you're going to open that pull request, you want to describe what you're trying to do with this code change. So think about a nice descriptive title, give a good description, think about that, like what you're doing, why, how you've tried to do it. And try not to have it too large. Like sometimes using more one feature, it's going to require huge amounts of code, and you want that person to be able to look at that and review it and understand it. So if it's too big, it's going to be a bit much for anyone to kind of consume in one go. And you might want to think about breaking it down into multiple pull requests. Like, does it really need to be that large? Commit messages can be a really helpful tool to explain the kind of journey you've gone on. Some companies do require this and others don't, but it can be a useful way for other people to look at your thinking as you've gone through, like what are the steps you went through to make this change and what were you thinking at each point. And then most importantly, be ready when you're going to open that pull request. You're basically asking people to give feedback on your work. And sometimes, you've put lots of effort into this work. You've been thinking a lot about it, but you need to be prepared to be told, areas where you can improve and where you can learn. And, the idea that learning never stops. So you want to be ready to hear about new and different approaches to what you've done. Next one. So the flip side of that is then reviewing a pull request. So as a software engineer, you'll not only be expected to open pull requests, but also review your peers' code and the pull requests that they want to put into the repository. So when you're doing this, the first thing you want to do is understand the problem, understand the task. What are they trying to do? Think about how you might have done it, and what other parts of the system might this impact? And then kind of jump in and start reading the code. You want to have a read of all the code. Is it readable? Does it follow the best practices? Is it tested correctly? Are there any improvements that come to mind straight away? And then you want to kind of start understanding the code, thinking about what's going on. Sometimes people will check it out and run it locally, have a little play around, see if it behaves as expected. And importantly, ask questions. If you don't understand, chances are other people might not understand. And you want to make sure, you're all on the same page when you're doing that review. You might be looking if there's any missing documentation. Maybe there's some kind of domain specific points they might have missed that you know about because you're familiar with this part of the code. But importantly, going back to some of the other things that Tom was saying, is any comments you make, any points you make on that pull request, you want to be very clear and constructive and kind of give actionable feedback on that pull request. And the next one. So, what does that look like? There are many different approaches on, how people give feedback on pull requests. But it's important always to be providing context. Sometimes this might be links to articles or documentation to kind of explain why you're suggesting something to be the way it is. You might want to suggest alternative approaches, explain in detail why that is, and you can use tools like code snippets and different things to kind of explain what you're suggesting when you're suggesting something different. You want to kind of ask introspective questions and really clarify that shared understanding. Like, don't necessarily jump to conclusions, and kind of make sure you're both on the same page. And we know, online communication can be a bit challenging. So it's really important to just make sure you're having the right kind of conversations when you're talking on those pull requests. Cool. So just gonna have a little a kind of a thought exercise. So if you have a think now to think to a task that you've done recently, maybe some work that you've done. Maybe it's one of your recent homework tasks in the for the boot camp, or maybe you want to think forward when you've kind of finished your personal project and you've kind of completed some work and you've put loads of effort into that work, and it's kind of captured all this lots of energy, thought, ideas, creativity in this piece of coding work that you're going to open a pull request for. Now you're going to open that pull request and present it to your peers. Maybe it's the other people in this boot camp or your colleagues in your role. And now just think about how you would like to receive that feedback for that project. And I think
thanks, Josh.
is going to share a link.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the chat of the Zoom, I have pasted a link. So please open that in your browser. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen then. So hopefully everyone can now see my screen. So just type in whatever you would like to get from the feedback, and then your input will appear here. Great. So you want the feedback to be honest, considerate, clear. With honesty, constructive. New ideas, kind, sincere. Wow. Constructive is the bigger one. Collaborative, relevant, clear, with explanations, unbiased. Great stuff. Positive outlook, truthful, direct, actionable, meaningful, progressive. Wow. Honest is the bigger one, and then constructive and actionable. Great. Truthful, face-to-face, direct, kind, friendly, fair. Oh, that was great. That was great. I think the most one which stood out were about the feedback being actionable, honest, constructive, helpful, clear what I can work, still going on. That's perfect. That's really great. Thank you, everyone. So I'm just gonna stop sharing and I think I'll hand over to Josh.
Nice. That's like a really nice word cloud of how we should all give each other feedback on our PRs. Perfect. We'll share that afterwards. We'll stick it in the deck and share it. Josh, do you want to talk everyone through the exercise?
Cool. Yeah. So we're now going to go and have a look at a pull request. You can all have a look at my attempt at doing some Node and using MongoDB, because it's not something which I work with normally. So I've opened this pull request into this repository, and then Herman, who some of you might have met at the roundtable event a couple of weeks ago, it was very late for him. He was going to be joining, but I think he's 2 hours ahead, so it would have been a bit late for him right now. But he's gone ahead and he's reviewed this pull request. So we're going to go into breakout rooms. We suggest like spending the first 5 minutes just individually having a look over the pull request. Go through those steps that I mentioned before. Read the description, have a look at the code, have a look if you understand what's going on, and then have a look at the feedback that Herman has given on that pull request, and pick out some of the great feedback and less helpful feedback. And then in the breakout room, we're going to just discuss as a group, what's good about some of those feedback and what's kind of less helpful about some of those points, and then think about as a group just like what we could do to improve some of those comments that Herman's made about my work. So there'll be one of each of us from Zappi, I think, in each of the rooms.
Josh, for some reason, it's not allowing me to add you to a breakout room.
Is it because there's more than one Tom Hollis?
Probably. Not sure.
Should I sign out and come back in again? Yeah.
I think we should be fine. Okay.
Okay.
Everyone's like, there's more than one Tom? What? What are you talking about?
Great. Awesome.
Oh, amazing. Thanks, Wayne.
Lydia and I were in the same group.
Okay, I'm going to reassign you. I'll reassign you now. So Lydia, move Lydia to rooms 5. Great.
I hate the breakout functionality on Zoom. I always get it wrong and I panic because you have to do it live in front of people.
Great.
Breakout room 3. Thank you.
No problem. Lydia, I've reassigned you now.
Okay, I'll wait for the pop-up to come up. I haven't seen it. Because you reassigned me to another one where Tom was in that one?
Yeah. Tom was in that one. So actually, this is probably a movie here. Let me move you to room 4. Great. Has it popped up?
No.
Oh dear.
Is it because I came in with Tom's link? Should I?
Probably. No, it should be fine because you renamed yourself.
Or I can stay. Oh, you're doing this group. People still here.
It's because like there's not going to be anyone in there. Let me move you again. Let me move. Okay. Has he come up now? Oh, I guess we'll just stay in this group because people. Hi, everybody. I'm not sure if you guys can hear us.
Can you guys hear us?
Because you guys, John, Asha, John,
Joanne, Laulu. If I think, can everyone unmute and kind of introduce yourselves so we know each other and pronouncing names correctly?
Yeah, it's Laulu.
Oh, okay, thank you. Asha. Can everyone else hear us?
I'm gonna pop into room 4 because there's no facilitator there.
Okay, I'll stay here.
Yeah.
Cool.
I can hear you.
Hi. Does everyone want to just introduce themselves in just a little bit, and then we'll jump into the exercise? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
We can start with Joanne. I'm just reading across what you're doing and kind of thing. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm Joanne. I'm not doing anything with the Black female for God. I saw their link on a meetup, and I've been following them for a while. I live in London. I do a bit of coding on Code Academy, and I also work with a few of my friends who are software engineers to do some challenges. I'm thinking of getting into coding next year, just saving up for it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Next, we have Laulu.
I'm one of the directors of Black Coder, but I'm so enjoying this session. So.
Oh, right. Okay. Lovely to meet you. And Asha. No, Asha. I don't know. It's okay if you don't want to. It's fine. I don't know how to pronounce this name. Rajon. Rajon. Is that correct? And Saf. Okay. I'm Lydia, and you guys already knew from the introduction. Do you guys have access to the link for the pull request? If not, I can send it to you.
Do you mind sending it? I'm just trying to assign you to room 4 because they don't have anyone in there, and I'm actually I haven't got the link either. Has it come up, Lydia, on your side?
No, it hasn't.
Oh, it hasn't. Okay, dear. Has it come up now?
Nope.
Yeah.
Have you checked with Tom if it's like popping up for him?
Yeah, maybe let me check with Tom. I'll be back, guys.
All right. Should I continue or wait?
Continue, yeah.
Okay. Let me get the link for you guys. Here's a pull request. Okay, can I send it just to, yeah. Can you guys see the link in the chat? And yes, no?
I'm back.
Hiya.
So I'm just conscious that there's actually a breakout room without anybody in it. So I'm trying to get them to come out of that without anyone. Can
you bring them to this group maybe? Because if this one's the one that's working.
Yeah, this is the main room. So let me go back into the room and ask them to come to the main room. Okay.
Okay, sure. Just if you can leave me a message in the comment to let me know that you've got access to the link to the GitHub PR request. Just a yes, so I know everyone's fine. If no, then I can sort that out. So do you guys have the link? Asha? Saf. Okay. So the task is just to read through it. But if you don't have the link, let me know because I'd like you guys to be part of the of the process. And the task is to have a read through the comments. So if you just focus on the comments and trying to decide for yourselves which one's terrible or not so helpful and which ones are really great. And if you could just pop them in the chat to kind of say this, you think this is a good comment or bad comment and why, so that we can start to sort of understand where the differences are and how we can give better feedback in our own projects. Is that okay? Can I have a yes, a hands up, something?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I'll check on everyone in about 5 minutes. So yeah, go ahead. And if you have any questions, again, just leave them in the chat and we'll see.
I'll just share my screen as well so that it goes to the project, if that helps.
Yep. Can you give an example? Or am I on mute now? Can you give an example? And yes, I agree. When I was reading that back, I thought, Herman? I guess two things. Give an example and how would you have improved that comment to make it more helpful?
Okay. How do you even say this? Like line 26. It says like, why do you keep doing this? You desperately need a linter. You could have just suggested the linter that could have been used.
Yeah, exactly.
And say that would be more helpful. And there was another one that was laughing. This is really good on. How do you read the comments to say like line, what comment I'm referring to?
You would read it. I can share my screen so we can go together. Hopefully the host will let me. I don't know, share screen. No, it can't. If you say the comment above or below, so above line 10 or below line 19, that would be.
Okay, I'm referring to the comment with the where it's actually put an example code. It's a bit further down, I think.
Which line is it above?
19.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's an example of being really helpful.
So the one
and actually suggesting something. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, because sometimes it's good to tell somebody when something is wrong, but when there's no guidance on how to possibly correct it or clarifying what exactly is wrong with it, I guess that it does make it very difficult. The less helpful feedback tends to be more personal, putting the individual on the spot. Exactly. Do you have an example, Abigail, from something in the code, from a comment in the code?
Yeah, I was looking at like, there's a point where it says we can do something simple like, and then gives an actual example. So as opposed to just being you, like who was a part of you heard of dry principles and then just providing nothing after that, it's saying we can do this as opposed to just you need to sort this out yourself and that's it, but actually saying we can do this and then providing actual examples as well.
And how would you respond to the helpful feedback? And Charlene, or anyone else who agreed with Charlene about the feedback being rude, how would you respond if you had the rude feedback? What would you say to that person? Let's say it was me who gave that comment. What would you say?
So it's definitely very easy to be like defensive and just say, you know, that I'm doing this, you know, I'm doing things all right. What do you mean? But possibly, I suppose you would just have to. I mean, you can't really be. I suppose when someone gives you a rude response or feedback, it can definitely be quite defeating. But I think especially within work environments, and people would just tend to just say, oh, okay, and then continue.
Yeah, especially when you're working with deadlines as well, it can be quite difficult to take the feedback and walk off when you're like, I need to fix this in a few hours.
I suppose the saving grace for this is we have to bear in mind that this is written feedback. So the saving grace is you can read it, go and get a coffee, sit down, and then come back and think about, okay, well, how can I frame how I respond to this? Because the temptation, if it's face to face, is always to immediately bite back. So you know, so one of the obvious things, and I know I've probably said it before, if I'm honest, is something like, you know what, if this is a bad day, we can do this another time, you know. and you don't you don't do it in a way that's rude or sarcastic. You just say it as a matter of fact. If it's a bad day for them, let's not do this now. But I suppose, for example, a good way of coming back to that would be to, when they're saying dry, oh great, thank you for identifying that. Can you show me an example of what you mean? Yeah, exactly. Because you're trying to get them to justify what they're saying. So if, I know this sounds really bad, but if they are being nonsensical, they immediately know they're being nonsensical. Well, if they do actually have a point, then they should be able to immediately direct you to it. So a perfect example is when he says, oh, it looks like there could be a typo. You defined a film ID on line 43. It's concise, it's straight to the point. It actually shows you exactly what the issue is and how to correct it, but also tells you, you know, you need to consider this really going forward and be careful with what you're typing. That's the underbelly of what they're trying to say. But because it's so direct and concise, it's like, oh yeah, I do need to be a little bit more careful with what I'm typing, otherwise I am going to get errors. So yeah, exactly. And that's a good point, in that also the method of receiving it, even though we say we'd like it face to face, if you know yourself and you know you might be like very easy to respond, maybe having it written is an easier way. So also knowing the other person, if you're about to give feedback, is quite important, so you know how to kind of give that feedback. But yeah, and one thing I wanted to mention, and I didn't quite have time to do it in the chat because I was managing some little people, is on the care spectrum. I know we're talking about how much does the person giving the critique care about the individual, but also how much does the individual care about what that person has to say? Because I can almost guarantee, like my previous boss, we had a very, very close relationship. So we knew how to communicate with someone, and actually what he said was more meaningful. Whereas his line manager, if I'm entirely honest, I just wasn't that bothered. They don't know my work. They don't know why we're doing it this way. So your critique is entirely invalid at points because you don't know what we're trying to achieve. So I think sometimes you also have to take that into consideration, is not just how much do you care about the person, how much does the person care about what you think at times? Because if you are, one thing I know I've learned, because I had to kind of manage other teams, is actually sometimes you're not always the right person to deliver that message. True. You're not always that guy, and that's okay. Not everyone's going to be for everybody, but sometimes it's maybe good to have somebody else point out something if you're not in the best position to, either because of where you are emotionally, but also where you are in a relationship with that person. It might be better to get an intermediary to raise it.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think that's the point of also asking whether you, that Tom made about asking whether the person is prepared for that feedback, allows you to kind of gauge. Because if you ask somebody, can I give you feedback, and they say no, clearly they don't care about what you think.
Yeah.
Or if they say yes, and also in how they say yes, if it comes to yeah, and they're looking at the stars and the skies and everything. So
yeah,
it's interesting.
definitely.
Feedback is a very interesting part of life, and we all have to go through it and learn how to deal with it. That's great. Does anyone else want to sort of share their approach on how they would respond to some of these comments and how they'd improve them? Just feel free to unmute or just leave a comment. Have we all gone through the study? The code?
Oh, sorry, I was literally just speaking and I didn't realize I was on mute. Yeah, I was just saying as we're waiting for people to come through to speak up. I find it interesting, that feedback actually is very much linked with trust, and actually that feedback process starts with actually your relationship with that person. So it's interesting what you said, Panama, about your boss, your old boss. You had a really close relationship and you really trusted him. So even if he gave one piece of feedback that may not be so nice, you will still probably take it on board. So actually it's about how much the leader connects with you as a person and has built a relationship with you. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be able to take feedback from anybody. We also have to understand our perspective as well on other parties. So yeah, this feedback is interesting. I find it really funny, but then I think of Herman and my interactions with Herman. I'm just like, yeah, this is so not Herman. So this must be a joke. So so it comes down to how much you know the person, and I think relationships have to be fostered by both parties. So that feedback is kind of given.
Yeah, and it's always like, I think at one point that was during the discussion about, I think a point that you made was, how are you taking, the feedback from anyone? Have you already made up your mind that this is who you are and you're not willing to grow? You're not looking to adapt and see how you can develop, or are you open to that? If you aren't looking to, then yeah, you can nod and move forward. But if you're looking to grow and develop, it's good to just take in the feedback, digest it, understand it, and areas you don't understand about the feedback, go back and say, okay, you said this and this, I took away this, but I didn't get this. It shouldn't be they've given me this feedback, now I have to go off and figure it out on my own. But yeah.
I think that's another thing to remember, is feedback can be an ongoing conversation. Because there's sometimes, like, when you get feedback, there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
And the best way to unpack something is bite-sized, just do it bit by bit. Well, okay, what do you mean by this? Can you give me an example? So actually, and then going away with that bit and then changing and saying, well, actually, when you said the other day that maybe there was a better way to do this, is this the kind of thing that you meant?
Yeah.
And because the great thing about that is, obviously, it builds your relationship. You get to see more of what the person's actually intentions towards you are anyway. And also you get to see if that person's got the time to walk that journey with you, because many part of the reason why me and my boss had such a good relationship was because he was willing to walk that journey with me. So it wasn't just a one thing of, you need to do this, you need to do it better because I want this specific outcome. It was a case of, actually, I just want you to be a better person, so wherever you go next, you're able to deliver at a higher level for yourself and whoever you're working with, not just for my outcomes within my team. And I think that obviously feeds more, because it then becomes a driver, because you're like, yeah, I want to do my best for this person, because you know what, as much as they put into me, they need to see some fruit.
Yeah, I was gonna ask actually, because obviously, you know, all of us in here, all of us are leaders, right? You know, we're all leaders in this room. You know, you may be going into an organization as a junior software developer, but what I had a question this morning. Actually, I was getting interviewed for a book, and someone asked me, "What are your greatest like challenges as a leader?" And I said, "It's actually trying to balance leadership and management." So like getting the results and also walking the walk with the person. So I'd love to just hear, like, you know, as future managers, future leaders, how would you like to give feedback, and how would you manage that? Oh, I'm not seeing the results as I would like to see it. But I also believe in this person, and I trust that they, you know, I can see a vision for them.
I'm leaving for somebody else to, but I'm happy to answer if anyone wants to go first.
Abigail, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose it will have to be in a way that's most understanding with the person, like the individual who you're giving the feedback to as well. Although, like, especially with like when you guys were just discussing right now, I was also thinking about how like I give feedback, and how I would want to give feedback, especially as someone who's I suppose neurotypical. At times when you may say something and then you get like a totally different reaction from what you were expecting. So having to navigate that, especially as well. But obviously, as you said, as well, it's just a progress. Feedback is a constant thing, a journey you have to go on to. It's not just like a easy straight road.
I think for me, it would be, again, balancing, allowing somebody to get to where they need to be. So if we take the example of code, if there is a specific thing and I know that there's one solution to it, I would tell them this is what you need to change. And then management would be asking them, what made you decide to do this? So you can kind of understand their thought process. And therefore, because management, you have to realize that you're also learning. You have people that you're guiding, and your job is to be able to guide as many different people that come to you. So you need to be flexible enough to allow different people to mold your management style. But then you tap into your leadership style to be able to identify that if this person is going in the wrong direction, you can call them back. But how you call them back is where the management comes from. Do you need them to get here right now, or do you need them to take a few steps so that they can sort of get to where they need to be? So that's how I would balance the two as a leader or as a manager.
Awesome. I think we've got people are coming back into the room now. So let's invite people in.
Because I was going to say the other thing about leadership is knowing that person's goal.
Awesome.
What is their end goal? What do they actually want?
That was really good conversations.
Yeah, even the whole topic thing, because you start to self-reflect. Because when it comes to feedback, I straight away, if somebody said something, I'm listening to answer, not listening to take in sometimes. So yeah, it's giving you some time to kind of reflect on yourself and how you can be better tomorrow because I'm sure someone in my team is going to give me something on Monday. Yeah.
I think humility is so key, right? Like if we need to come in as a humble person, realizing that we actually don't know it all. Sometimes, right? That makes us think, oh yeah, I don't need that feedback. I'm this and that. And feedback doesn't demean your value. It helps with your progress and who you're meant to be. So yeah.
Stops you staying in the same place.
Exactly. Awesome. People should be coming back in now. Hi everybody.
Hello. I just did like a quick impromptu demo of the platform.
Oh.
Remembered why I'm not a salesperson. Cool. So we hope that was a useful set of conversations. Saray, do you want to? There's only one thing really left to do, which was to fire up. We're going to do another one of those Mentimeter things.
Sure. So if you guys already have got the link, that's fine. Otherwise, I again paste the link here. So open it up, please, in your browser and answer to the question of one key insight or takeaway that you have from this exercise. And I'm going to share my screen quickly. Can you all see my screen? Perfect. Yeah, just typing the takeaway and the key insight. Herman can be really mean. Self-reflection. This group has very high emotional intelligence.
I said this to my group earlier on, but chatting to Herman earlier, he really enjoyed writing all of those like really mean pull request comments because you just can't do it in real life. I think he really liked it.
Emma, who was with me, is a huge fan of Herman.
Yeah, I think it is important to say that you wouldn't expect comments like that in a normal day-to-day. It was very, we had to really push for those mean comments.
No, absolutely. So feedback is an ongoing journey. Zappi data research, relationship, and feedback are key. Quality feedback is very important. How to provide feedback, good opportunity to share ideas. Approach in giving feedback is very key. Share, you want the person to win. Get great communications technique. An example of a good constructive and actionable review. Great. Lead with praise, don't suggest changes. Market research insight is key. Lots of good key insights and takeaways. And one last one, Mentimeter is great, and the way one delivers feedback is very important. Absolutely. Written versus spoken feedback can change how people respond. It is important to take time to respond. Be prepared for feedback from everyone in life. Great insight and takeaways from everyone. Thank you very much.
Cool. So I think that's us done. Just thank you for coming, engaging. It was really useful conversation. I learned a lot from the people that I've spoken to. So really appreciate it. And Owen, I don't know if you wanna close or say anything about what's happening next on the bootcamp.
I muted myself again. So thank you so much, Tom and the team. Thank you, Lydia, Gwen, Sarah, Josh, for taking out your evening, especially on a Friday, to come and actually help us and support here at the bootcamp. We're really excited to see how we can work together with Zappi moving forward. Next week, Friday, we have the well-being session. I'm sure a lot of people are excited about that. So yeah, I know everyone's doing their projects at the moment, and it can be quite stressful. Please do try and take time out. I know it's hard to kind of for yourself, but yeah, have a fantastic evening. We'll leave you guys to it. Speak soon. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
So nice
Thanks,
to meet you all.
everybody.
Good luck.
Good luck with the project. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.